LaMelo Ball finally passes the 40-point threshold. He goes all the way into 50 territory. We'll talk about his career night. Unfortunately, the Hornets do lose a player over the weekend for the rest of the season. We'll get to all of that today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We are free. We are available anywhere you get your podcast, and that does include YouTube. There's Doug Branson. You can find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com, with all the write-ups alongside your other favorite Walker, David Walker, on Twitter at David B. Walker. Also, subtext information is there. And last but not least, Doug is also hosting Locked On NBA. Check out that pod as well. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. By the way, your favorite podcast now has a newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Hornets newsletter, the daily one. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free right now, lockedondaily.com. That's lockedondaily.com. Start your day with the all-new free Locked On Hornets team newsletter. And finally, last but not least, this episode.
I thought the last one was the last one.
No. We got Game Time to talk about. Game Time? Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. And one last thing. Nah, I'm playing. Gotcha. We got to get into the weekend. I'm not playing anymore. LaMelo Ball. Goodness gracious. What a weird, exciting, roller coastery start to the season it's been for everybody involved that you would consider a Hornets fan, a Hornets content creator. It's been a wild one. This weekend, no different. LaMelo Ball goes for a career high. He scores 50, a 50-burg against the Milwaukee Bucks. They fall to Milwaukee. They do lose the game, but LaMelo does go for 50, 17 of 38 from the field. He hit 10 of his 13 free throw attempts. I know why you're laughing this time. A lot of times I have to ask. I know you're laughing at the 38 field goals attempted in this game. It's
Needed
absolutely
every single
ridiculous.
one of them.
6 of 17 from distance. He also grabbed 5 rebounds, ended up with 10 assists, only 4 turnovers in this one with him playing 40 minutes, high usage percentage. It's actually not bad. So with LaMelo going for 50, I talked about it. I joked about it. I said he is so 40 averse that he will when he passes it, he's just going to go into 50, and that's what happened. Pretty cool to see the 5-0 next to LaMelo's name after not being able to pass that 40-point threshold.
Oh, it was great. I mean, he was scoring generally at all 3 levels. I mean, he doesn't really take mid-range shots, but he takes his floaters in the sort of mid-post area. He was hitting those. He was getting to the rim. He was getting fouled. He was knocking down 3-point shots, 40 points in the second half. There haven't been a ton of players that have scored 40 or more points and a half in NBA history. So he joins an elite club there. And then you add on the 10 assists. I mean, if you look at both of these games, these past 2 games where he almost hit 40 and then he goes into the 50 here, they've been efficient. I mean, even though he takes 38 attempts, like it's an efficient scoring night. What was the true shooting percentage on this? So 57.2. 52.6 effective field goal percentages. Those are good. I mean, they're not outrageous, but they're above average, and particularly when you take into account that he took 38 shots, really incredible. And they were obviously down big for most of this game, I guess. But like he scores 40, and I go, I'm kind of disappointed that he's going to score 40 in a blowout. Yeah. And then he goes and scores 50, and in the middle of scoring 40 and 50. That's what helped bring them back into this game. They got within 3 right at the end, could have had an opportunity to tie it. And I'll tell you what, Walker, if they tie it and go into overtime, I think he scores 60.
Oh, man, they might. He would have had 45 field goal attempts, and he would have reached the 60-point threshold to join Kemba Walker. And he already joined Kemba Walker as a couple of the only guys to ever score 50 points in a Hornets uniform. I do want to go back to how I introduced this, Doug, because it was just a calendar week from one day to the next, 7 days counting. What a wild one it's been. For LaMelo specifically, here we are talking about a tight Brooklyn Nets game where LaMelo Ball is benched in the last 3 minutes and 47 seconds of that one. Here, everybody has their takes, not just us, by the way, national media. It's on the ESPN NBA show. It's on all of the main NBA shows for whatever publication you're talking about, The Athletic, ESPN, whatever. People are talking about LaMelo, your $200 million man, getting benched in the last 347. So then he comes back out. They have a really tight win right after that Brooklyn game against Detroit, where LaMelo, he's very, very good offensively. He's throwing stuff up from the hip, from like 40 feet out. When he's trying to kind of draw a foul, it goes straight in the bucket. What also happens in that game that he goes over 30 in a win against Detroit in overtime, he fouls out in that game, and now here he goes for 50. Doug, how do you begin to describe the type of season LaMelo has had so far? If I were to task you with this assignment to write for everyhornetsboxscore.com, you just hired me as your editor. Congratulations. I need a story about the start of LaMelo's season. How would you write it? Because it's been a pretty wild one, in my opinion. I just don't know how we talk about it in the grand scheme of things compared to everything else that he's endured in his basketball career.
Well, I mean, he's playing at an all-star level. I mean, you just start there. Like if you look at his numbers across the board, he is playing similar to, I mean, almost eerily similar to the level that he was playing in his sophomore season. And we got clues that this was going to happen based on just his play before he left for the entire season last season. I mean, if you look at those numbers around that like December, January area where he was getting into the zone, like he looked at it. I feel bad for Steve Clifford, man. He was so close. Steve Clifford was so close to having an all-NBA player, somebody on the Tracy McGrady level that he was an assistant coach for in Houston, and he just couldn't keep him healthy. So, yeah, I would say playing at all-star level, I would say it's complicated because the problem is, like, individually he's playing at an all-star level, but I think what Charles Lee wants him to play at a level that is going to win future playoff games, future playoff series. And this is hard to understand. It's hard for me to understand sometimes that those are two different things. That like playing individually at an all-star level is different than becoming the kind of player that can be depended upon to win playoff games. I think he can be both. And that is the challenge that they are both, that Lee is taking on and that LaMelo is taking on. So that's how I would describe it. It's complicated.
It is. I mean, it's a little complicated. It's also incredible what he's doing so far. And he's also been healthy. Knock on wood. I'm going to continue to knock on wood. But he has been healthy, which has been a great sign. And unfortunately, that's not the case for some other players on this roster. Did you want to give me final LaMelo Milwaukee thoughts and maybe a couple more before we move on?
Well, I have a question, and it's the question that is always asked when a player scores a huge number in a loss, little 50 burger with a side of loss, right? Should we dismiss this performance because it happened in a loss?
Oh, I'm glad you used that word because that makes it easier for me. I would say no, you absolutely do not dismiss this performance. If you were to say how much stock do you put into it despite the loss, I think that's a little harder to measure. But no, you don't dismiss it. I will say I'm reminded a little bit of the Kemba Walker 60-point performance against Philadelphia, where Jimmy Butler played spoiler to that one, hitting some clutch threes to not only send it to overtime, but eventually win. Here's Kemba going for 60, and then the Charlotte Hornets lose. Now, 60, it is in a different stratosphere because 60 is just not something that happens. I wonder how many franchises actually have a performance that includes 60 points within its history, because 50 has to be a part of every franchise's history. So there is a significant difference when you're talking about that 10-point increase. So maybe that's why we put a lot more stock into Kemba's and we just don't really care. But with a 50-pointer, yeah, it sucks that they didn't win. Like if they would have won, then I think we would have been absolutely celebrating even to the nth degree. And it's not anything that is necessarily LaMelo's fault. It's just how it happened. When you score 40 in the second half and eventually you end up losing to Milwaukee. It sucks. Like, it sucks that they lost this game. But to entirely dismiss it, no, I do not dismiss a 50-pointer, especially because it's a career high. Like, this is that's an impressive performance from LaMelo, especially when you get to the second half.
I have thoughts on this. Mm-hmm. So I saw a few people that were dismayed by this, or not dismayed, but they were, because I think it's okay to be disappointed that they lost the game. You're a fan of the Charlotte Hornets. You're not just a fan of LaMelo Ball. You want the Hornets to win, so you can be disappointed. But I saw a few people that I felt like went over the line into dismissal. So I've got a few words for them.
Good.
Coming up.
Good. Nice. Okay. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
Doug has thoughts. You set me up, and then you set yourself up, really, to just go off in the next segment.
That's like LaMelo. That's what LaMelo was doing. 50 points, 10 assists, set himself up, then set others up.
I, for one, am excited to see it. What I'm not excited about is to talk about the Grant Williams injury. He is going to be out for the rest of the season after suffering a torn ACL. This is the bad one that the Hornets experienced. There's a couple of injuries. They've held guys out for a while, but we have not had a season-ending injury yet. Until now with Grant Williams. We'll talk about the effects on this team with that injury. Coming up next, LOH. Before we get to the final two segments, I want to tell you that this episode is brought to you by Skims. Hey, I want to talk to the dads out there that can probably relate to this. Your underwear, your drawers, well, they haven't had a good update in quite some time. I was always partial to something simple myself, something a little classic when it came to my underwear. So I was never sure what I was doing when it was time to replace my old ones with something new. Like maybe you're like that with the dad life. Then you tried Skims, Cotton 3 specifically, the boxer briefs that they have, and it's everything you love about classic boxer briefs. Honestly, they're even better than that. They're the perfect weight. They're the perfect classic cotton feel, and the design is nice and simple, just how people like it. From now, you can be a dad that is stylish with your underwear with Skims. Might be helpful in the bedroom. Hello out there, dads. Shop Skims men's at skims.com/lockedonnba. That's Skims men's at skims.com/lockedonnba. Let them know that we sent you too. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you're looking for the perfect gifts for the whole family, Skims just launched their biggest holiday shop ever, also available at skims.com/lockedonnba. More Locked On Hornets ahead. You have thoughts about the outright dismissal of 50 points scored by LaMelo because it came in a loss to the Milwaukee Bucks, 125-119. Share your thoughts, Doug.
So there are definitely games that exist where guys go off for huge numbers and you can dismiss them because they were irrelevant, they were inefficient, they didn't impact the result of the game in any kind of way. I'm reminded of Devin Snooker scoring 70 in a 10-point loss to the Boston Celtics. And I think he scored like 50 or something in a half. But it didn't matter. That team was not going to win that game. The Hornets had an opportunity to win this game. And they had an opportunity to win this game not only because LaMelo was scoring. They were down. This is crazy. They were down 15 points, 116-101, with less than 4 minutes to play in this game.
Yeah.
And anyone that remembers this game from just 2 days ago and that watched it, I think had some sense at some point from 4 minutes to 0 that they were going to maybe tie this game, like they had an opportunity. And it was because LaMelo was scoring, but it was because he learned a lesson from that Detroit fourth quarter, and he started to defer a little bit and find Brandon Miller. Once the defense was fully adjusted to LaMelo Ball and blitzing him with everything that they had, he was handing the ball off to Brandon Miller, who knocked down big shots and scored 30-plus in this game as well. Youngest duo since Russ and KD to score this many points combined. And so you can be disappointed, but if you dismiss this performance, I can only assume one of two things. That one, you didn't watch the game because you didn't understand the impact that 40 to 50 had on this game, or your brain has been so ESPN first take pilled that you see a 50-point performance in a loss and you just immediately go to dismiss it.
Yeah.
Because what LaMelo did is he didn't give up and he made great decisions in crunch time and Obviously, this team has fundamental issues with injuries and all kinds of different things that are going to impact winning. But LaMelo scoring 50 points impacted winning in a good way, even though they lost.
No, I love that. Applying the context here, what was the experience like? Because we can go back to that Kemba game since it's just in our backyard. We can go back to that one, where that one was a tight game. Kemba was doing everything he possibly could to give the Hornets a win in what was a fantastic team with Philly. That was the Jimmy Butler Philly team. So that was an excellent squad. And yet here is Kemba dragging this Hornets squad toe to toe. Here's LaMelo doing the same thing in the second half where he's allowing everybody else to eat. Here's your other star, Brandon Miller, going for 30 points that you're helping set up as well. And you thought that this game was over. No. Here's LaMelo in the second and in the fourth quarter, coming back and helping you have what was a competitive game. I do think that absolutely matters. So you're totally right. Applying the context here, even with a 6-point loss, applying the context does matter, because now the way that we'll remember this one is, yeah, LaMelo went for 50 and almost brought them all the way back. It won't be, yeah, LaMelo scored 50 in like that 20-point blowout, so it kind of sucked, whatever. No, there's some substance to talk about here. So you're right. To outright dismiss it is absolutely the wrong thing to do.
Well, add the context that it's Milwaukee who is playing a lot better. They're getting healthier. Damian Lillard had it going in this game. Giannis Antetokounmpo was much better than in the first matchup with the Hornets. And so this wasn't a loss to the Portland Trailblazers. This wasn't a 50-point game in a loss to the Washington Wizards. I was so worried that 40 or 50 was going to come, cheaply against a team that was essentially giving him those points. Milwaukee's got a really good defense. Like, they hang their hat on the defense, and LaMelo was able to slice and dice it, and he stood alongside Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard, and he looked the same. He looked like a star in this league on that night. So don't dismiss it.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up with Doc Rivers, because it reminds me of the quote after the game. Doc Rivers telling you that they were focusing on Brandon Miller in this one. And I love that, because here's LaMelo saying, all right, you want to focus on Brandon? That's fine. Here's 50 ball for you. Yeah, here's Doc Rivers on Brandon Miller. He said, quote, Brandon was the guy we focused on before the game. I thought in the first half we did a great job, and in the third quarter we let him get going. He's really becoming a player. I don't know how much of this is a shot like Jason Kidd took at Jason Tatum when they were in the NBA Finals, and Kidd said, we wanted to make sure that we were focusing on the Celtics' best player. I'm not sure it's exactly the same where Doc Rivers is calling Brandon Miller the best player. But when you say that's the guy that we really focused on, felt like we did a nice job. And then here's LaMelo going for 50 in the second half. I'm just saying, LaMelo with a nice reminder. Okay, go ahead and focus on Brandon all you want to. I'll just go for a career high.
But you understand what that is, Walker. You understand why Doc Rivers, and he's probably not the only coach to make that. In fact, I know he's not, because I've seen other games in which Brandon Miller was the focus of the defensive end. You know what that is.
I know this game, no doubt.
That's a team looking at the situation and going, well, there's one guy that's taking himself out of games with his fouling and some of his decision-making, and there's another guy that's not taking himself out of the game and also starting to heat up. So why don't we just focus on the guy that's not taking himself out of the game and then roll the dice and hope the LaMelo Ball collects, 3 fouls in the first half, and we don't have to worry about it. So that's why I say it's complicated. But in this game, he cut the turnovers down, made great decisions in the fourth quarter, and he didn't take himself out of the game with fouls. And so this 50-point game represents exactly what LaMelo Ball can become and is if he gets out of his own way.
I was going conspiratorial that whole time when you were asking me if I knew what Doc was doing. I was going conspiratorial in the sense that he was trying to drive a wedge between the two Hornet stars to manufacture a trade target for the Milwaukee Bucks because they're under 500. He's trying to, hey, I don't know about you guys being able to play with one another. LaMelo, come to Milwaukee.
I don't give Doc that much credit. I don't think he'll just watch any Game 7 with him. I don't think he's an evil genius.
Okay. All right. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
We have to talk Grant Williams, his significant injury, and then we'll give you a quick preview in the game against Orlando. That's still to come on Locked On Hornets. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action every Sunday with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. And the FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. This episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. That's what Game Time's picks can do for you. Game Time picks, the curation, not only does it make it easier to save more on sports, but also concerts, comedy, theater, and even more than that. They have all-in pricing, and toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. They give you seat views too, so you know exactly what you're getting. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Goodness gracious, don't die. Don't do that at all. Game Time probably
go now, go today.
Yeah. Go before you die. Go before you buy. Yeah. You'll be able to get the seat view. I'm gonna try to steer this the right direction after that one. Game Time will also credit you 110% of the difference with their lowest price guarantee. Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
YOLO.
Don't die. More to come. That's one of the better ones. That's one of the best ones in quite some time. I apologize, Game Time. Hopefully, look, if you want more attention on that read, it's a good way to get it. I think
people were paying attention at that point.
It's a good way to get it. Okay, let's go Grant Williams here, Doug. They've been dealing with so many injuries all year long. Brandon Miller, glute strain. Miles Bridges, bone bruise. Mark Williams, tendon in his left foot. They've had so many different injuries. Trey Mann kind of now bouncing in and out of the lineup, minutes restriction when he's playing. It's been rough. It's been so rough to navigate these waters. But at least they have not had the injury ending, the season-ending injury until here they experience it with Grant Williams. So Shams put out yesterday on ESPN, Grant Williams sustained season-ending injury, his tear to the ACL, meniscus, and associated ligaments in his right knee. So this one, it's saying he just tore his ACL might not even do it justice. Williams was averaging over 10 points, over 5 rebounds, and over 2 assists per game this season. What really sucks about this one is that he was injured late in the fourth quarter of this loss to Milwaukee over the weekend. So he's out indefinitely. He's out for the year. What are your thoughts, Doug?
This really hurts because Grant Williams was a player that represented a lot of things for the Charlotte Hornets. And, I mean, it's three-point shooting. He was the best brush screener to get Brandon open for three that the team had. He was a guy that would hit a three in the first quarter to get the offense going. He was a LaMelo Ball pick and pop option. He was a switch defender. He was a head case in a good way. I mean, I think he motivated the rest of the team in that way. This stat that I pulled from the Hornets game notes, Charlotte's net rating improves by 17.8 points with him on the court, a mark that ranks in the 97th percentile league-wide, according to Cleaning the Glass. So if you had any doubt about what his effect was on the Charlotte Hornets, you've got it right there. So I think we ought to take a trip to rotation station. Choo-choo. This is not going to be an exciting one.
No.
But I've got the rotation document pulled up here. And what I'm showing you is what we projected the rotation to be in 24-25. And I just thought I'd do this for effect. So, and this is the injury report so far for this game against Orlando. Miles Bridges, will take him off the board. He's out. Mark Williams will take him off the board. He's out. Nick Richards will take him off the board. He's out. Trey Mann, back issues. We'll take him off the board. He's out. How about Grant Williams? ACL, not ACL tear, by the way.
Yeah, right.
ACL tears Like
No,
multiple tears.
there were multiple associated meniscus, associated ligament damage.
Feeling for Grant Williams, because the guy just gives it everything. A freak injury. I mean, he just took a weird step, and he's got a long road back. But you know, he was in good spirits, at least on social media. But Grant Williams will take him out. So now you've got Moussa Diabate. You're gonna, and I've kind of updated this already.
Yeah.
But I think they're just gonna do Moussa Diabate at center. Tijan Salon, welcome back. I hope you're gonna speak starting lineup because you're back in it. And Vasa Micic, Nick Smith Jr. He's back from Greensboro. They've recalled KJ Simpson, Seth Curry, Cody Martin, Taj Gibson. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, these injuries have devastated the Hornets' ability. There's no bench scoring. Where's the bench scoring going to come from? Maybe you start playing Nick Smith Jr. a little bit and hope that he's remembered how to shoot. But all the bench scoring is gone.
They go to Seth in those situations. They've gone to him a little bit earlier. I think Seth will be somebody. I know it's not the dynamic ball handler that Nick Smith is supposed to be. I guess the question is who doesn't play. That's the real question of those reserves. Who's the odd man out?
Everybody's playing.
Because everybody is. You're right. Here's a 10-man rotation based on matchups, not trusting Tijan, Taj Gibson being old and probably tired. Cody is going to play a lot. Seth, I expect to play. Nick is the guy that would be the odd man out just because Charles Lee might not trust his defense. And if he's not hitting shots and you don't trust him defensively, then Nick Smith Jr. is just not going to be playing. Yeah, look at the front court. I mean, it's Diabate, it's Salon, and if you play center, if you've played center for this team, watch out, Diabate, because odds are you're going to be injured, and that's why it hurts so much with Grant. Of course, we know about stretching the floor, too. Doug, he was, I believe, 4th for the Hornets this season in minutes played. I had this filtered out here real quickly. I was trying to pull back up the stats. But, yeah, I mean, he was 4th in minutes played. LaMelo, Brandon, Miles, and then it was Grant. So you're talking about your offensive trio that you trust the most, and then it was Grant Williams right there playing 30 minutes. So it's a tough loss. 10 points per game, shooting, toughness. It's brutal. Like I know we don't talk about him nearly as much, but think about some of the big shots that he's hit down the stretch of these games as well. In the fourth quarter, we've seen Grant come up big from distance. So this one sucks.
It does, and I think we did get some good news on Mark Williams and Nick Richards being closer to getting back. So maybe this isn't as devastating as my visual makes it seem. If those two guys are back within the next week or so, then maybe they can weather some of this stuff, and that then you don't have to play Tijan as much. Moussa, I think they've got to figure out his contract situation though, because the problem is they've got 15 guys on the roster. So somebody's got to go in that situation. I would imagine Taj, forget all of the things that you gain by getting veterans. Now you just need bodies that can actually stay on the floor and play. I don't think that they're going to go after any kind of free agent, although I did find this by Keith Smith via Mark Stein's Substack. He asked Keith to give him the best free agents at every position. The two best centers on the free agent market right now, Bismack Biyombo.
Yeah, I knew it was coming.
And Frank Kaminsky.
that is a special type of
timeline. We're in the worst. We're in the worst timeline. So for a third year in a row, the Hornets, by the way, when Grant went out with the ACL injury, the camera immediately cut to Charles Lee. And he made an expression that I can only describe as a man that was looking at the situation and remembering the moments before he decided to accept the job. And in his head, he was thinking, there's just no way. There's just no way that it could happen 3 years in a row. I mean, no, there's no way. And here it is. They are devastated by injuries again. And I think it cements officially that this, at some point, is going to be redirected towards the Cooper Flag sweepstakes. Like LaMelo and Brandon are going to get a ton of shots up. They're going to make their all-star bids. And then at some point, trade deadline, watch out if Trey Mann gets back off this back injury and starts playing well. Watch out Trey Mann. Watch out Miles Bridges. Watch out anyone not named LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller for trade opportunities.
Last couple of things. Daquan Jeffries, I'm not sure his status with being official on the roster, but Jeffries is another guy to maybe consider. But also Bobby Marks had this tweet, and then we can end it here. He said, roster ramifications in Charlotte. As a result of the Grant Williams injury, the Hornets are allowed to apply for a $6.5 million disabled player exception. In order to use it, though, Charlotte would need to have a roster spot available. They currently have 15 players under contract. So Daquan Jeffries, Taj Gibson, I think those would be the guys that you're talking about. I think if you used it, then it might be harder to create a spot for Musa to come in with a big contract, especially if Mark Williams and Nick Richards are coming back. So perhaps great timing for Musa in terms of opportunity to showcase your skill. Maybe the timing here is bad if you're trying to parlay your two-way contract into something bigger. So now you would count towards the 15 roster limit. So if they use the disabled player exception, who knows? But there's going to have to be some reconfiguration going on with the injuries, especially the one with Grant, who's not coming back this year.
Well, listen, thank God Tijan Salon seems to be picking up things very quickly, because there is a universe in which Tijan looked much more raw and didn't pick up things very quickly, and they were sort of there was a very realistic scenario where you were forced to play Tijan in Greensboro because it would have been so bad to put him on the floor at an NBA level. That's not been the case. Tijan has been able to hang around, and obviously he's not an NBA level rotation player such that if you were serious about making a playoff run, that you would have in the lineup, but he's somebody that can give them these sort of mash unit minutes.
Yeah.
So thank God for that. And I look forward to seeing more of Le Tigre taking crazy pull-up shots that go in sometimes and make right. Fun plays on the defensive end. So, yeah.
All right, that'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube, Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com, Locked On NBA. Subtext info is also on everyhornetsboxscore.com. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. on Sports Radio 92.7 FM. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.